What's good, friends? List episode 83 of the Gamecast coming at you. Activision studio Vicarious Visions has really been on quite a roll of late. From their outstanding work on the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy remake collection, to most recently developing the critically acclaimed Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 remakes, the Albany studio has really stood out in Activision's stable of developers. But with recent restructuring within the gaming giant, it looks as though that success hasn't been rewarded in the way that many would have liked to see, with Vicarious Visions now becoming a permanent support studio for Blizzard. So, this week, we try to make heads or tails of Activision's decision to position one of their fan-favorite studios of recent memory to a studio now just focused on providing additional help to Blizzard projects compared to their own. And with that same studio now rumored to be a crucial asset to the development of the long-rumored Diablo 2 remake, how fans of both the studio and the genre-defining IP should approach this news. Plus, we've got new details regarding IO Interactive's James Bond 007 project and where it fits into the lineage of the espionage titan. What does an IO-developed Bond game have to do to provide an espionage experience that still finds that heart of Britain's favorite fictional son? Also, we've got new Halo Infinite news coming on a monthly basis now. We round up reviews on the medium and much, much more coming up on the newest jam-packed episode of the Game Pass Gamecast.
Now the fun begins.
Richard.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversations around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. I'm your host, as always, Travis White, aka Travelus, on most internet platforms. Joining me, as always, my partner in crime, my co-pilot, Mike Peapack. Mike, what's good? What's going on? And, man, the stock market game. and normally we don't bring this shit into it, but the fact that it involves GameStop, I feel it's pretty relevant to what's going on right now. But, you know, a wise man once said, it's all about the game and how you play it, and then would, you know, kind of spit out a bunch of water from a water bottle and hit people with sledgehammers. But, you know, you're my default go-to finance. You're my financial consultant whenever it comes to all this shit. So what the fuck is going on? Like, give me the spark notes. Like, I understand it, but I guess fill people in who aren't as savvy to what's going on and why this is such a big deal. Not only in, you know, gaming, because it involves fucking GameStop, but like just in general, like kind of give people the like spark notes version of this. And then we can talk video games.
Absolutely, yeah. I was, you know, as I was right before show recording, I hopped in the shower because I was actually off work today, thank God. And I was kind of just sitting there, and I was debating on what I was going to say or how I was going to talk about this to try to keep it relevant to the show. So,
we're doing it head on, baby. We're head on.
I think I hammered down exactly how to talk about this to prevent people from rolling their eyes or being like, this isn't a political or an economic show. And you're right, it's not. It's a video game show, you know. But in this case, it 100% deals with GameStop stock, which is, believe it or not, one of the biggest retail giants when it comes to gaming in history and currently. And here's basically like a Spark Notes version of what exactly is going on with the GameStop stock for those of you that might not know, might not care, or at least might know on face value, like, oh, there's a squeeze. Like, yeah, there's a squeeze, but there's a lot more to it. So basically what you see and what's going on with the GameStop stock, bottom line is there is huge hedge funds. And when I talk about hedge funds, I mean, there are conglomerates out there that pull a bunch of money together and then they go into the stock market and a lot of times they'll invest on mutual funds or create mutual funds, which basically means you break up a bunch of investments, you buy a bunch of stock over a, a multitude of different sectors, whether it be like gas and oil, energy, tech, manufacturing, military. There's a ton of different stocks that you can buy to kind of mix up this portfolio. Your portfolio is your entire investment, portfolio, basically everything that your investment in. And mutual funds are a great way to mitigate risk and prevent yourself from becoming too exposed to a market failure in one sector or the other. Long story short, some of these big mutual funds, one specifically being Melvin Capital, but a few mutual funds shorted GameStop stock. They looked at GameStop stock and they said, this retailer isn't doing that great. What's the upside to this stock? Yada, yada. They come down to the consensus that they're going to short the stock. And it's not, stocks are shorted every day. People say stocks suck, blah, blah, blah. But Melvin Capital and these other stock people shorted the entire float, which means the entire amount of stocks available to be purchased by the public. They short this stock to the tune of 130% of the float, which means that if there's only $1 million, if there's only 100 shares available, which this isn't the case, but just to simplify the math, if there's 100 shares available, Melvin stock went out and they shorted it by 130%, which means 130 shares, basically they overbought shorts on the stock, which left them open to a ton of risk on this. So building off of that, you go and you see these people, Melvin Capital being the main one. Earlier this week, they were so exposed that on the new year, just starting January 1st, they lost 30% of their entire mutual fund. And they ended up getting bought up by bailed out of their position by a few different entities. But the main one to really focus on is they got bailed out by this company called Citadel Capital. And what Citadel Capital does is not only are they mega uber rich, like we're talking uber, like not New World Order rich, but like super rich. They are actually a major player in the stock market because guess what? The Citadel Capital are the people that help Robinhood have liquidity to buy the stocks that their people order. So they spend $2.75 billion to bail out Melvin Capital from this position. When this happens, a lot of people, Redditors alike, but then there's a lot of whales get into the GameStop stock, and it goes from $140 and it spikes all the way up to like $350. Now, what happens now is Citadel, who controls Robinhood basically, because Robinhood has to go to Citadel because they're what's called a market maker. They make the purchases and everything because they have the cash liquidity. Citadel comes to Robinhood and says, hey, you got to cut the shit. You got to keep people from, they can't trade, they can't buy any more AMC. They can't buy any more GameStop. They can't buy any more BlackBerry. They can't buy any more Nokia because we are just taking so many losses and we are way underwater on these investments. Okay, done and dusted. So Robinhood prevents people from investing in that shit. And basically, it all turns into this big shit storm with a whole market crash, and you just figure out that the game's rigged, and Citadel
Wait
Capital's
a minute. Wait. That doesn't sound like the free market.
Yeah, and
wait a minute.
As far as everything else is concerned, just to kind of bring it back to gaming, as much as possible, just so I can give an overlook here, is
realistically, like, GameStop was just the one picked out, it seems like, in terms of just for what it was selling at, and the, like you were talking about, being in a short, like, it just happened to be GameStop.
Yes.
For like the meme of it, like, at this point.
Exactly. And the biggest thing that people need to realize when it comes to this stock is a Reddit user by the name of Deep Fucking Value, who has profited $44 million off of this trade. He risked $50,000 well over a year ago. He came out with a YouTube video that's about an hour long, and it's a very deep dive, an analytical dive into why this GameStop thing made no sense. And he did this in July of 2020. He made this hour-long video. So he exposes himself at $50,000. But the story, the matter of fact is that this isn't a bunch of people investing in GameStop, the store. The stock has completely been disconnected from the store. People aren't investing in GameStop as a store, not their business model. There are a lot of things to be positive about. Ryan Cohen, founder of Chewy, who took on Amazon head on with a online dog food pet company and beat Amazon. If you beat Amazon in online sales, that's fucking huge. Amazon's the big dog. So Ryan Cohen takes over GameStop. That's one big thing. Last year, in a year of a pandemic, GameStop, yeah, it's down year over year. They had $1 billion fucking come through the door in a fucking pandemic. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. There's new consoles. There's this, there's that. Bottom line is, GameStop is not going fucking bankrupt. They're not right now. Are they going to in 5 years? Maybe. Maybe it's going to be sooner. But this year, they're not going fucking bankrupt. So this Reddit user takes a deep dive and he says, what the fuck's going on here? This stock's shorted 130%. Why? Oh, that's crazy. All these hedge funds are shorting this. This Melvin, blah, blah, blah. Melvin. They're overexposed to this. So he goes and he looks and he takes a dive at all this shit. And he says, something's up. And you know what happened? The online community, deep fucking value, Reddit, they got these fucking pigs' hands in a cookie jar. That's what happened. We caught their hands in the cookie jar. They fucking took it out on us in 2008 with all their bullshit fucking lending and all those fucking big money institutional practices that fucked the entire economy in 08. We got them. We caught them red fucking handed at their own game. That's why they're mad. So, long story short, we get banned from trading that. So it tanks the market. And you know why? Because guess what? Deep fucking value, all these Redditors, they go in, they do the research. The shorts are up tomorrow. Tomorrow, these shorts come, the chickens come to roost, and these hedge funds are going to be fucking bankrupted because they are so naked short, which, by the way, when you're naked short, which means you don't own the stock, but you own the shorts to it, it's fucking illegal. So these guys are illegally shorting the stocks well in over their head because by all intents and purposes, it probably should have fucking went bankrupt. But anyway, they get caught in the cookie jar. But guess what? All these fucking bigwigs at Citadel, they have way too much skin in the game. They have way too much control. And we see Robinhood bow down to the master because they have no choice. We see Webull bow down to the master because they have no choice. TD fucking Ameritrade bow down to the master because they have no choice. All these financial institutions are being run by these hedge funds. And it's like, it's not even like it's a hidden thing. It's in plain fucking sight for any average Joe to see that the system is fucked. And everyone kind of knew it, but some people, myself included, had a little bit of faith in capitalism because, you know what, like, there are rags to riches stories. And this is one. And this is one where the average Joe is getting back.
Yeah.
And, you know, it is what it is. And now
it's like the thing that, to me, this is like, okay, so if capitalism in our country at this point, which we'll see how that goes in the next 20 years, but like right now is the end all be all. And, you know, you love to see like some of the people now saying like, oh, all these like hedge fund managers and stuff like that, like, oh, well, maybe they should, you know, not go and buy avocado toast and stuff, like people memeing on it now. Well, if this, you know what, man, if fucking capitalism is the end all be all and this and that, it goes right back to them. You fucking play the game this way, and they're the ones whose hand got caught in the cookie jar. It's not our fault that, like, just because the average Joe found out a way to win at that system, like they had been winning at for fucking decades. Oh, well, you can't win. That's not fair. The perfect example is like, say, back in the day when we're playing Smash Brothers on N64, fucking Wall Street right now is the kid who was losing went up and turned the N64 off because he knew he was going to lose.
Exactly.
So yeah, that was talking investments and, you know, by Mike Peapack Group and whatnot, you know, but it's just such the talk of the town right now that like I needed to bring it up because like you've done such a good job, like just in our circle of being like, yo, this is what to do. This is what's going on. This is why this is happening, you know, and really now GameStop being swept up into all of this and just the nature of Reddit being involved in the internet in general, like has turned this into somehow a gamer-centric thing when it really isn't. It's literally Wall Street getting caught with his pants down and people calling them out and then being like, oh, nope, it's just not happening. We own the game. You're not going to win it. So
right. And it's infuriating for a lot of people, myself included, because, you know, like I said, I'm not someone who's like going to be, I don't necessarily carry the water jug for capitalism. I do think that it's the best option that we have, you know, right now. The biggest thing for me when I look at this, and like I said, it's something that from someone, I'm not trying to call anyone like not trying to say you're filthy casual, whatever, but from someone who's just like wondering what the hell is actually going on here, it's just basically if you remove GameStop from the entire equation, fuck it. It's not GameStop. It could be fucking Arby's. It doesn't matter. Nobody's buying this stock. Nobody's doing this because it's fucking GameStop. Yeah, is there some benefits? Is there some promise? The reason why the initial person who started this and more people got on board was because there are a lot of positives behind GameStop right now. They are doing some of the right things to try to pivot to an online marketplace. They're kind of trying to survive. And the $1 billion through the front door helps. It's not going to go bankrupt at any time soon when it gets $1 billion through the door. So it hasn't had a positive year since 2017. So fucking what? People removed the fact that it's GameStop. They caught someone's fucking hand in the cookie jar. It's like Volkswagen in 2008. There's a super squeeze situation in play, and we had a chance to make some money. And you know what? A lot of people did, and some people are losing now. But it is, it's just that's why GameStop is successful from a stock standpoint, and it has nothing to do with its business acumen. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's simply it was the right time. It was the right stock at the right time.
No, definitely, and that's spot on. I mean, really, it is. It's just gaming has been caught up in this just for the sole fact that realistically, any other stock could have really been in there with a similar situation. It just happened to be GameStop, and it literally plug anybody else in. But the sole fact of it also has been GameStop is just the meme behind it. So crazy fucking stuff. Anyways, Mike, let's talk video games. Now let's talk legitimate video games. Just catch me up real quick before we get into the show, because we got a lot on the docket this week. Catch me up. What have you been playing this week?
This week I've just been playing actually a lot more chess, and honestly I haven't really had a lot of time to play very much because pretty much every second of my day has been doing research on the stocks to see what was going on. But as far as gaming is concerned, I just been playing some Halo and getting back into CSGO a lot because of CSGO matches and stuff. So I've been working on that, and our team is 2-1 and open right now, so hoping to keep that momentum going. They lost the first match without me. They just kind of ran into a buzzsaw the first match, but it is getting better for us. We're doing a lot better, so hopefully that continues.
Nice. Yeah, I've kind of been bouncing around to a lot of stuff. It's been hard to kind of simmer down into one thing necessarily. I've kind of been having that gaming ADD, like I've talked about before, where it's like I have a hard time focusing on one thing just because not one specific thing is necessarily scratching an itch. But my fiance and I wrapped up our multiple playthrough of Wolf Among Us this past week. Grades as always. But we've talked that game to death and a half. Outside of that, just kind of hopping around a few different things. I kind of jumped back into The Witcher 3 to finally get around to playing the Blood and Wine expansion. Only put a few hours into that, but that's been great. And then I got the itch to kind of play Monster Hunter World again. I had started it maybe about a year after it came out, giving it a try, and I only put maybe 10 hours into it or so at the time, and I was like, you know what? I dig it, I'm enjoying this, but something else had popped up, like a game had come out, and I was like, okay, I definitely want to play that, so jumped on that. But I wanted to jump back into it now that the PC version of it is basically caught up with the console version, so I wanted to jump back into that on PC and give that a try, and really enjoying it, really enjoying it. But at the same time, there's just so many things now coming out, like we're going to talk about in a couple minutes when we do our little review roundup for the Medium. That's out today, as of recording at least, on the 28th. And that's a game that I really do want to play. That being on Game Pass, that's going to take my attention away from that. So, I'm hoping the Medium is that game that kind of sticks me into, okay, this is what I'm going to be playing for the weekend or whatever, and I haven't seen really estimates on how long the game is or whatnot, but, in general, it's just been kind of bouncing around to a ton of different things. I've, played a couple CSGO matches, played some League. It's just been one of those weeks that there's nothing I really have stuck to. But, I have played it's been 5 to 10 hours in a couple different things here or there. So hopefully now that the Medium is out, I'll have something to kind of sink into a little bit. But with that being said, Mike, since we got a ton on the fucking docket this week, let's head into a button mash. We'll go through and run through some quick hit news, stories from the past week, get you guys caught up before we head into our big topics for this week. Starting with, Microsoft has announced that it was reversing its decision and will not change Xbox Live Gold pricing. Furthermore, free-to-play games will no longer require an Xbox Live Gold membership to play on Xbox consoles. Originally, a new post on the Xbox Wire had unveiled last week plans to increase the cost of Xbox Live Gold, the online gaming service Microsoft has been using on Xbox platforms for over 18 years. According to Microsoft, this was taking place in order to evaluate the current, quote, value and pricing of the service it provided. As a result, Live Gold was going to jump up in price. However, though, if you were an existing Live Gold 6-month or 12-month subscriber, the price would continue to renew at the old price of $9.99 per month or $24.99 for 3 months. But the year-long price was going up to $120, and they weren't doing 12-year plans. They were only doing up to 6 months, and it was literally just going to be $10 a month. Mm-hmm. So, and luckily, later that day, Microsoft, reading the room, said, cool, you know what, we're going to back this up. Because clearly this was, and I'm sure we'll wrap this up towards the end, but clearly it's similar to how, different mobile companies were doing whenever text messaging and data started to become a thing. It was, okay, you could have access to those, if you don't want that, cool, but it's technically going to be cheaper for you to go to this plan. Was clearly a plan to push people away from standard Xbox Live Gold to go into a Game Pass Ultimate membership where you get, Xbox Live Gold plus Game Pass for PC and standard and Game Pass proper as well for $15 a month, spending, where it's a much better value. But, it's smart to, at least for them, that they read the room and said, okay, let's peel it back a little bit. But moving on though, Ninja Theory has announced that that with the studio now focusing on Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2, Project Mara, and the Inside Project, Bleeding Edge, the multiplayer game they put out it was the beginning of the year last year. It feels like a lot longer though. Bleeding Edge will receive no future content updates. Bleeding Edge's Twitter account announced the news while also reassuring fans that even though the game won't be getting any new content, it will continue to be playable on Xbox and PC. Quote, with the studio now focusing on our new projects, Senua's Saga, Project Mara, and the Inside Project, we have decided that there will be no further content updates for Bleeding Edge, Ninja Theory wrote. The game is still playable on Xbox and PC. Thank you to the fans, and keep teaming up and causing chaos. Resident Evil Village voice actor Jeanette Moss has died at the age of 39 following an 8-month battle with colon cancer. Moss, who played several characters in Capcom's upcoming Resident Evil game, including one of the witch sisters that make up the daughters of the House of... I still can't say this last name now. It's one of those things that you hear it 50 times, but I still can't say it every time it pops up. Demetrius. I don't know. I can't say it. The fucking tall vamp lady that everyone's standing over right now, and simping over. That's one of her daughters. Also suffered from Crohn's disease and had contracted COVID-19 last year. Details which were outlined by her fiance, Dusty Warren, in a GoFundMe campaign that was set up to help recover her medical expenses at the time. Tencent has acquired a minor stake, in Don't Nod Entertainment, the developers of Life is Strange, Vampire, and Twin Mirror, for example, for €30 million, which is a little over $36 million in the United States. The funds raised will go towards self-publishing their IP on PC, console, and mobile. Hitman 3 is a major success for developer Interactive, which has already recouped all of its development costs for the game. Those costs were recouped just under 7 days after the release of Hitman 3, according to GamesIndustry.biz. The success of the game is even more important for the studio, as Hitman 3 is the first game in the series self-published by IO Interactive. IO Interactive CEO Hakan Abrak told GamesIndustry.biz that keeping the game's marketing and PR close to the development team was a huge benefit for Hitman 3's success. Quote, we have been really happy with the Hitman 3 journey, Abrak said. It has been a labor of love between our fans and everyone at the studio. As a developer and publisher, we are immensely proud that we can say Hitman 3 is already profitable. We have recouped the total project cost in less than a week. Psyonix is adding new visual options for Rocket League's arena Neon Fields following reports from players of potential seizures. In early January, the loadout reported on Yeah, the loadout reported on neon-soaked New Arena, noting that it was potentially causing seizures in some players. User Psionics tried to kill me. That's the first time I'm actually reading that username. Psionics tried to kill me made a post on the official Rocket League subreddit, which started, quote, I am epileptic, and the new map is giving me seizures. I tried complaining on Psionics support and tweeting at them. Got no real answer than pretty much, oops, sorry. So I made a Reddit, and hopefully my voice is heard there. So, wow. I honestly, like, while I was putting the doc together, I just didn't see the name. It was one of those, like, oh shit, that's like a Reddit user name that I'm gonna have to, butcher or whatever. But once it's one of those things that you start reading it, it hits you, you're like, fuck. But that person is not wrong. but
nevertheless.
Nevertheless, catching up on some ESO, Elder Scrolls Online stuff, Mike, about the new expansion coming up. Bethesda has revealed the Elder Scrolls Online Blackwood, a new story chapter that serves as a prequel to the events of the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. It will launch on separate dates in June for PC and consoles. Revealed in a live stream on the Bethesda Twitch channel, the chapter will launch on PC June 1st and June 8th on consoles. Blackwood will task players with, quote, uncovering the schemes of the Daedric prince Mehrunes Dagon, who served as a primary antagonist of Oblivion. 30 hours of story content is set to be added to the game, set over 800 years before the events of the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. The update will also introduce Oblivion Portal World events, quality of life features, and a companion system similar to the single-player Elder Scrolls games, where players will be able to recruit, develop, and customize NPCs to fight alongside them. The Lord of the Rings Gollum has been delayed to 2022. Nacon, the new publisher, announced the news on Twitter, confirming the company's involvement alongside Daedalic. Quote, we are forming a fellowship with Daedalic, the publisher, the Lord of the Rings, or to publish the Lord of the Rings Gollum. Nacon's tweets reads, the game will be released in 2022 on Xbox and PlayStation consoles, Nintendo Switch, and PC. More news to come in the future. A new Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic game is reportedly in the works, and it is not being developed by EA and BioWare, the studio behind the original game. As reported by VGC, the latest rumor comes courtesy of credited Star Wars insider Bespin Bulletin, who spoke on the recent BOB. The podcast, BOB of the podcast episode, about the project that is said to be in development outside of EA, and that, quote, we'll never guess who the studio is that's making the game. Amongst my digging, I heard that there is a Knights of the Old Republic project in development somewhere, Bespin Bulletin said. Quote, I talked to a couple of people, and I also found out that Jason Schreier said that it's not with EA, and we'll never guess who the studio is that's making the game. Tencent has required a majority stake, another Tencent investment here, majority stake in Clay Entertainment, the studio behind such games as Don't Starve and Mark of the Ninja. Clay Entertainment founder James Chang took to the studio's forums to announce the news and to assure its fans that, quote, as part of the agreement, Clay retains full autonomy of creative and operations across all aspects of the studios, including projects, talents, and more. Microsoft has announced that games with gold for February 2021 are Gears 5, the remastered version of Resident Evil, Dandara Trials of Fear, Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb, and Lost Planet 2. Announced on Xbox Wire, Gears 5, Resident Evil, and Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb will become available for those who have Xbox Live Gold on February 1st, 2021. And finally, Mike, the Medium's review roundup, like I was saying before, right now, being the first. Really, I think, yeah, this is the first true Xbox Series X and S exclusive to come out. I don't believe it's coming out on Xbox Standard. It's coming out on PC also, but day and date with Game Pass. You can play it right now. Metacritic right now looking at a 72. Here's some excerpts from some of the reviews that kind of gives you a better, view of why the scores may be a little middling. GameStop gave it actually a 9 out of 10. Quote, eventually the Medium's narrative threads begin to weave together, even connecting to the original goal of discovering Marianne's origins. The promise that everything somehow connects in some unforeseen and fascinating way is a thrilling reason to see the game all the way through. Stevivor gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Quote, because it's a macabre nature, the Medium won't be for everyone, and certainly isn't a killer app or a killer Xbox app, but it's definitely worth a try if you're an Xbox Game Pass subscriber. And finally, DualShockers gave it a 5.5 out of 10. Quote, despite its technical prowess and stunning visuals, the medium is a drag. From slow, uninteresting gameplay to confusing and poorly executed story, Bloober Team's latest makes for a good tech demo, but not much else. So, like, after all that was a really fucking jam-packed button mash. Anything you want to touch on before we kind of head back through into our big topics?
Yeah, something that comes to, my attention probably immediately is the voice actress Jeanette Mouse dying at age 39. Obviously she fought bravely for 8 months, and you never lose a battle like that. You can succumb to the sickness or the illness, but anyone that ever fights cancer never truly loses. It's just sometimes in life, for whatever reason, things outside of our control exist that we can't really do anything about, and cancer seems to be that one thing so far. So we'll think about her, in sorrow whenever we play the game, whenever it comes out, because I think being an artist, not getting to enjoy your hard work and effort that you put into a game like this one is very saddening, and it's very, very it's a very bad thing. Obviously, I'm just kind of at a loss for words that someone, you know, with her talent, with the amount of hard work that she put into the game, isn't going to get to see it through technically. And that's really sad. Outside of that, the Ninja Theory news, pretty interesting. In the Just simply because Ninja Theory, and I love them, but I guess again it comes back to, if they're not going to make a good Ninja Gaiden, I'd rather them not make one at all. And then Microsoft, rolling back the changes that they were looking to make. Obviously, you get your hand caught in the cookie jar, Melvin Capital. You're going to run into some resistance, and I guess it's something that I'm just very happy that they kind of reversed stance on this, because it was a pretty, big time negative, for lack of better terms, that they were, wanting to make the changes that they were. So it's great to see them kind of face the music and realize, oh shit, maybe we made a mistake here, and make it right. So good for them, and hopefully they keep making these good decisions going forward.
No, and I definitely agree with you on the Xbox Live Gold stuff. And granted, I've been like a Game Pass Ultimate member now for well over a year now at this point. I think for Gears 5 was whenever I signed up for it, so I can get it early or something like that. I can't remember how it worked, but yeah, like I'm a huge, obviously we're huge fans of that service, but the sole fact is, like, not everybody has super great internet access to be able to download stuff 24/7, where Game Pass maybe doesn't make the most sense for them, but they still have decent enough internet to play games online that it's like, okay, yeah, like there are some people who that service just isn't necessarily applicable for, but considering, like, I get what they're trying to do, and they're trying to say, okay, obviously we're trying to move from this format of service to this format of service and stop supporting that and do this, and we want to merge everyone into that. Like, I get it, but it's one of those things that's like, one, read the room, and two, like, you're doubling the price. Like, that's a bit of an ask. That is like a bit of an ask and a half.
Yeah, it's like one thing to be
like, okay, go up
value.
$20 maybe in a year. Like, okay, but fucking holy shit, man, doubling it. I'm glad though it was changed, and more options will never hurt you. Realistically, if they gotta suck it up, Microsoft has literally unlimited amounts of money for the most part, so like, they'll figure it out, type of thing. Oh god, so they got to keep another service a standalone one, my god. But anyways, Mike, since we got a lot on the docket, let's head into our big topics for this weekend. This is kind of a bittersweet one to start off, and hopefully by the end of it, we kind of like, by the end of our stories, end on a better note. But it starts out rough, so instead of dancing around, I'm just getting into it. Activision merges Blizzard and Vicarious Visions. This comes from Adam Bankhurst over on IGN, as always, link in the description. Activision Blizzard has confirmed that Vicarious Visions, the developer behind such titles as Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 and Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, is officially being merged into Blizzard Entertainment. As reported by GamesIndustry.biz, the Vicarious Visions team of about 200 people will now be employees of Blizzard and are, quote, fully dedicated to existing Blizzard games and initiatives. This means Vicarious Visions will no longer be creating games as a lead developer. Quote, after collaborating with Vicarious Visions for some time and developing a great relationship, Blizzard realized there was an opportunity for Vicarious Visions to provide long-term support, a representative said to GamesIndustry.biz. However, Activision Blizzard did not reveal what the team has/will be working on going forward. Vicarious Vision studio head Jen O'Neill has been promoted to Blizzard Blizzard Executive Vice President of Development, there we go, and will be part of Blizzard's leadership team and will report directly to Blizzard President J. Allen Brack. Simon Ebgier, I think I said that right, who was the chief operating officer for Vicarious Visions, will take over the studio head role from O'Neill. Vicarious Visions was founded in 1990 and was acquired by Activision in 2005. The studio has worked on everything from Guitar Hero, Spider-Man, Tony Hawk, Crash Bandicoot, Destiny, Skylanders, and much, much more. Founding members Catterick Bala and Guha Bala departed the company in 2016 in order to establish Velan Studios, the development studio behind Mario Kart Live Home Circuit. And kind of a follow-up to that, too. Vicarious Visions reportedly brought into Blizzard to work on Diablo 2 Remake. This as well comes from Adam Banghurst over on IGN. Link in the description, yada yada, you get the gist. Following the news of Vicarious Visions has been merged into Blizzard Entertainment, a new report says the studio was brought into Blizzard to work on the Diablo franchise, including a planned remake of Diablo 2. As reported by Bloomberg, Vicarious Visions, the studio behind games such as Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, Crash Bandicoot, and Insane Trilogy, has been working with Blizzard since last year, even though the announcement of its merger was only made today, January 2nd. Up until 2020, the Diablo 2 remake was set to be developed by Blizzard's Team 1, which is located at its Irvine, California campus, and was the go-to group for reworking classic games. Its latest title, Warcraft 3 Reforged, was not received positively and currently has a 59 on review aggregate site Metacritic, which also happens to be Blizzard's lowest score to date. IGN gave Warcraft 3 Reforged a 7 out of 10, saying it's, quote, is an uninspiring remaster, but Warcraft 3 itself is still a great game nearly 2 decades later. Internal documents reviewed by Bloomberg pin the game's failures on poor planning, miscommunication, and a rushed release due to financial pressure from management, among other forces. One example given to that, following the game's reveal in November 2018, it began taking pre-orders for 2019 before letting most of the development team know of the release window. Blizzard and Team 1 obviously didn't want to make the same mistakes with the much-anticipated Diablo 2 remaster, and following a, quote, post-mortem, Blizzard ended up pulling the remaster from the team and putting the division behind Diablo 4 in charge. Vicarious Vision is also said to be working on this project, which is also known as Diablo 2 Resurrected. So, I'll be honest, this is a really, really tough pill to swallow. You have Vicarious Visions, one of, really, hands down, the best studios within Activision proper in terms of, you know, their kind of stable of development studios, especially when it comes to goodwill and things like that. You know, they have not only this critical acclaim, but they have just a ridiculous ton of goodwill from the gaming community from their most recently Crash Insane Trilogy and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 being two of the best Activision titles specifically to come out of recent memory that literally all of gaming seems to kind of agree on, like, yes, this is good, more of this, please. You know, so it's something really Activision and specifically Blizzard have needed for quite a while. And really their reward for crushing these last few projects, now you're getting designated as a support studio to Blizzard. Not necessarily, hey, you're falling under Blizzard now and you're going to make Blizzard games, but you are leading the project on this. You are the, you know, you're a Blizzard proper studio where you are going to be leading development on things like that. You know, so, you know, like, this is fucking a spot-on example of what the gaming community is trying to not see regularly. So, while saying that, though, Mike, you know, gaining a studio of that caliber who is on a fucking heater and a half, being put on one of the worst-kept secrets in gaming, the long-rumored Diablo 2 remake that, you know, we're both, you know, would be pretty excited about, being fans. is still very welcoming to hear as a fan. Now, that doesn't mean, I'm happy about it, because they should be, heading the projects themselves front and center from the beginning. But, as I have more faith in them than Blizzard proper or Team One or anything like that. So, what do we make of this, Mike? How do we, as both people who, not only comfort games in a somewhat professional manner and, just fans of the industry, the game doubles, or, really the games that Vicarious Visions has made, and of course, Diablo IP, how do we tackle this all properly as just, people covering this, fans of both the IP, the studio, what have you. The Diablo 2 remake is something we've wanted for a long time, and, we've known about through the grapevine and whatnot, but knowing that it's in the breath in a roundabout way that caused a studio who has been crushing it to become just a straight support studio, it just doesn't add up. It doesn't sit right. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I am really sad because the Tony Hawk remakes that came out were so great. I had so much fun with them. I thought they were fantastically done. I thought that it paid homage in a really tasteful way to Tony Hawk, the classic games. I thought that, there's not a whole lot else that could have been done to make it that much better, to be honest. And just overall development studio, kind of being put on the back burner whenever you just released. I didn't get the sales numbers or anything, but just from me playing it specifically, like, I could tell that the game was going to be successful. When it comes down to it, just bottom line, the gameplay is amazing. It's so smooth, and I was really impressed with the way that they, kept the game simple. They used the KISS method. They kept it simple, stupid. And not only did they keep it simple, which paid huge dividends for them in the gameplay, but, they just did the right things with the gameplay to make it a little bit because Tony Hawk 1 especially is a little clunky when it comes to, landing tricks, whatever you want to say. It's a little clunky, but the biggest thing that I noticed from it was they removed all the clunk. It was smooth to land, to skate. That entire process is extremely smooth in this game. The thing that I loved so much about it was not so much just it being smooth, the fact that they made these quality of life adjustments and didn't lose the tone of the game, which is what made it so successful back whenever it first came out. I was really happy with the way that the game was done. I still remain happy to this day. It's one that's kind of backburnered for me just because there's been a lot going on. I kind of overdid it when it first came out and I first bought it. I spent a lot of time playing it, and that's not a bad thing per se, but it was just something that I beat the first game and 100%ed it, and then the second game I got to 88% was whoa, because it felt like a grind and not I was I was enjoying it. I was enjoying it, don't get me wrong. But I kind of have this syndrome with games where I grind the piss out of games, and it's the mission isn't complete until it's complete. And that was a game that I enjoyed so much, from the art style to everything about it. I enjoyed so thoroughly that I wanted to make sure that it was a slower burn, that I really got the full, Tony Hawk experience. And in the end, I'm glad that I waited, because now that, we're talking about it a little bit more, I'm going to go back and play it. But I think tonight on the docket, I have to go to my parents' house and fix their computer for them. But what I think I'm going to do tonight, this evening, if we're not gaming, I think I'm going to end up just diving into Resident Evil 7 here and getting that playthrough going, because, the news with the voice actor there. But I also, I'm intrigued by the medium and want to give that a go. But, Tony Hawk is one game that I really want to go back and dive into. But I'm really hoping the only positive that I can really take out of this is that, because Vicarious Visions did such a stellar job on the remake of Tony Hawk 2, me talking about it more and more, while I'm disappointed because they kind of lose their freedoms in some sense when it comes to Blizzard being owned by Tencent. We won't talk about that. It's just, I'm genuinely kind of pumped, because they did the Tony Hawk remake so well that I'm hopeful that they're going to do the same for the Diablo 2 remake, which, by the way, as much as I love Tony Hawk, Diablo 2 is my fucking baby. And
Oh my god, yeah.
and I've been clamoring for a D2 remake because I love the game so much, but it's also another one of those games where it's like, if you're not going to do it right, don't even bother.
True.
So I'm just really hoping that because they got this team to work on it, I'm really hoping that this is the, correct direction that they needed to be able to do it the right way. So I don't lose, so you don't lose, basically you don't lose the goods. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's where I think my concern kind of comes into, where I'm like you. Vicarious Visions fucking crushed everything that they've really kind of handled. I've never been a true Crash Bandicoot person necessarily. Like, I played the games when I was younger. They were, they're good, they're whatever. I never had that true like nostalgia for Crash necessarily, as some other people did, as being more of a Nintendo kid growing up than a direct PlayStation kid. I got the PlayStation after the N64 type of thing. So like, I'm more nostalgic to Zelda, Mario, things like that whenever it comes to franchises outside of a few PlayStation franchises, but Crash not being one of them. But playing the Insane Trilogy in 2017 on, PlayStation consoles at that time, then coming to, Xbox and whatnot later, playing it at that time, I'm like, this is fucking perfect. This is, I can appreciate what the Crash games have, we're doing at that time. Now that I'm a little bit older, while, I'm not the deepest platforming fan in the world, like keeping so much of the heart of that, of what those games did well, and even what they didn't do, but keeping true to that vision of what those games were and bringing it to a more modern sense with obviously modern graphics and whatnot, but where you're not just, putting, it's a perfect example of doing a good remake compared to just a remaster or just, an up-res or anything like that, like we saw with the Mario 3D All-Stars and stuff like that. Like, a lot of people were complaining about Mario 64 and things like that, that it's just like, no, this is poorly done, where you see that from a ground-up remake where they're bringing in the original mechanics of the game and keeping it true to the actual vision of the game, but doing it so well in such a polished manner that it speaks to both new and old fans alike. So seeing that with Tony Hawk again this year, or, well, I guess last year now, technically, I gotta get used to that. Last year, that it's like, this really was starting to become one of those studios that almost like a Blue Point in a way, like, that, granted, Blue Point for the most part works pretty directly with Sony now, but this is a studio that, okay, you want to do that remake, you want to do that reimagining, like they did, like Blue Point did with Shadow of the Colossus and Demon Souls now, and the list goes on. This is who you give that to. This is that studio that blind faith is going to do good at this point, because they've crushed everything that's come towards them. So to me, that doesn't, seeing how that is, like, part of me wants to be jazzed about that, because I'm like, we've talked about it for so long. Like, we're hyped at the thought of having a D2 remake. Like, that's great. Bringing D2 for what it is into the 21st century and making it a modern game on PC, especially with how, a lot of people have taken Diablo 2 and their opinions on that, and, would be such a great transition piece to Diablo 4 and, kind of regaining that faith for a franchise. It's great to see them get that opportunity to work on that, because I know if they're eventually going to be kind of leading this development, that's great. I worry, though, that won't be the case, though, that they're not going to be given full control of that project. I don't want to say that IP, but that project in general, where it's a studio that has done so well and rewarded with, okay, now you're shackled. Where, sure, they kind of were to begin with, but to the degree that, okay, they have, it's them as a studio working on this project. Nobody coming in, maybe for some reason you're bringing in somebody outside to help with, to provide a little support. Where now it seems like they're becoming the support. Now, hopefully, the reports are true that, hey, they are going to be moving in and really overseeing this project with Blizzard, because that's a smart move. If you ask me, Blizzard is a publisher right now that really needs a lot of goodwill. That they need right now. A lot of their IP are struggling, in terms of not only popularity, but with goodwill to their fan base. And to especially Diablo, more than anything, needs it. I mean, we're going to start to see more of the Diablo Immortal memes popping up again. And not surprisingly, that is previewing very well, and I probably will end up playing it because I just love dungeon crawlers and Diablo and whatnot, and isometric RPGs. But I just really, really, really hope that this studio, who has that much talent and that much, they just have that secret sauce that perfectly encapsulates what it takes to make a good remake, a good reimagining of a classic experience compared to so many others, that I just really hope that's not taken for granted, and really they end up losing that image of themselves and that ability to be that studio. I just don't want to see them get lost in the shuffle of Blizzard, and it's likely it could happen. It just, you hope and pray not, because you want to see that succeed. Me as a Diablo fan, you as a Diablo fan, Mike, you just want these IP that we have so much connection to succeed. Not only that, but you and I, who both enjoyed Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, like these titles that have just absolutely crushed it, that we've raved about, knowing the talent behind these studios, it should be a match made in heaven. But when we get into the bureaucracy of these, mega publishers, especially one that is a Diablo, they almost used to be that, kind of how Bethesda used to be, almost that, not underdog, but, almost that feeling of by the fans for the fans. Like, when you're getting a Diablo or you're getting a Blizzard project, it is going to be very in line with what gamers want now. It was good. They were always good at taking what had worked in the past, listening to people's feedback, listening to what people want, and bringing those new ideas into the game, and developing their games around the fan bases, where now they're just a mega corporation. And you just hope it doesn't get lost in the shuffle of that. But I don't know. I'm still excited for a D2 remake. I know you are, right?
You have to be. Yeah. There's no way you can't be excited about that type of thing.
So, but as it is, Mike, let's move into our next one here. IO Interactive is planning to double its staff and open a second studio for their James Bond project. This comes from James Trofton over on The Gamer. As always, link in the description. IO Interactive is being handed the reins to the James Bond IP to make a video game all about the suave womanizer with a questionable history that stretches back as far as the 1950s. But IO is giving its own unique take rather than adapting Craig, Moore, Connery, or whoever else. But is IO ready? The short of it is, no. The company was open about as much, but it intends to expand so it can be ready for James Bond. For context, it began independent in 2017 while also keeping the Hitman and Freedom Fighters franchises. As of writing this, it employs around 200 employees, and naturally, IO has other IP beyond Bond to work on, so not all can be dedicated to the British spy. As such, IO Interactive is looking to expand its staff from 200 to 400 by opening another studio in Sweden. There's a lot hitching on this, given that Bond has been, in essence, banned from video games due to the squeamishness towards excessive violence from the IP holders, with the last one being in 2012. This was an FPS centered around Daniel Craig's take from Activision called 007 Legends. IO Interactive director Hakan Abrick revealed, quote, "It's very, very special, a boy's dream. Sometimes it's still a little hard to understand that it's us making James Bond." According to Danish website DR, IO Interactive isn't just pining after a singular entry. The word trilogy is even on everyone's mind after all, but they are aiming to build a James Bond universe. Quote, "Today, we have 200 employees, and I expect that we will have over 400 employees over the next few years. So There's no doubt that that the Bond agreement means an insane amount to us. IO Interactive's James Bond game is still years away, but if the excitement of the director himself is anything to go by, it should be safe in safe hands, especially given that it has garnered the approval of MGM and EON Productions, the two who have been notoriously hard to pitch a James Bond game to. So, while this title was really a ways off still, it's definitely exciting to see the build up already to the development alone on this game, given IO's success with Hitman 3 that we literally just talked about already, and some of the new tidbits we've kind of learned about the game's development, upping the staff size in the new studio, being a unique original Bond and story. It's not just a licensed movie game type of thing. This is a unique story to Bond, a unique Bond itself, kind of akin to that of, a Marvel Spider-Man or something like that. So knowing how sacred EON Productions and MGM really viewed the Bond license, being disappointed and not quote unquote worthy enough until they got that pitch from IO and being like, okay, cool, yeah, you go ahead and take it. And knowing how critically acclaimed the newest iteration of the Hitman series is, Mike, what are you hoping to see from IO's Bond title? I know we touched on it a little bit back before whenever it was first announced and whatnot, but what does it need to really not only be as successful as a Bond game, but really just a successful espionage game in general, especially whenever you think about, too, given the potential competition it may have by the time this comes out in Perfect Dark and even a rumored Siphon Filter reboot on the Sony side. What does IO Interactive have to do to have that secret sauce, to have what makes a good espionage spy game, and more importantly, a good Bond game in general, for this to succeed?
I see a game, or at least I think, a game that kind of has a similar style to, maybe not as in depth as Splinter Cell, but this genre of game, the espionage game, I guess you could call it, is pining for a, true espionage. I mean, I don't know how to really explain it other than like a spy game, but previous iterations of these movies have focused a lot more on the run and gun aspect of it. You're always fighting, you're always shooting, which is that's cool, but it's missing a lot of the spy elements that some people might be looking for out of a game like this. I think that you miss the mark on a spy game when there is little to no spy activity. There's literally no part of the games that you feel like a spy in previous games, that is. I feel like a game that might have done a little bit of a better job at providing that experience would be a game like Mission Impossible. I felt like Mission Impossible did a spectacular job at a true experience, espionage experience. And that, just kind of speaks to not only is Mission Impossible might have been a bit more upscale when it comes to the spy things, sure. But, you can just clearly tell from the games that that's the kind of feel that Mission Impossible, the game, wanted to go for.
And obviously, too, Bond's history is much more, while the, narrative behind Bond and the world building and whatnot has remained very, still held up long term. Bond's history has become much more, it doesn't necessarily carry over well into a modern society with some of the things he did with women and whatnot like that, where yeah. it hasn't necessarily, that part hasn't aged like a fine wine, where, when you look at Mission Impossible is a 90s made, entity, IP in general, in terms of the film version of it, that, the Tom Cruise version of Mission Impossible is very much built with, it's built in a much different time and carrying much different values and things like that, where, if you ask me, Bond has still been, absolutely still very good and has transitioned well, but I think people are now trying to and this is a good example, trying to move away from, maybe some of the shitty things Bond did back in the day, being a piece of shit to women,
Yeah, that's true. I definitely agree with that. And the womenizing nature that, James Bond has certainly, comes to mind when you talk about basically when you're saying exactly what you're saying about it.
Mhm.
He was, for lack of better terms, obviously, a big part of the movies was him being a womanizer. But I do feel like, honestly, like with Goldeneye, at least, that was a little bit,
Mhm.
that was a less important part of it. It still happened, but it wasn't so integral as like part of the movie, because it's like in the older movies, like me and my roommate Dom tried watching one of the older Bond movies, and it was just so bizarre how like any girl he spoke to just like dropped their drawers for him pretty much instantly. It's just bizarre. Like I just couldn't believe it. Like when I watched it, I was literally like, okay. Like you don't. There's no plot reason for him just to bang anything that moves. It's just that's Bond, and it's like, okay. Like I don't know what else to say about it. It was just so bizarre that was the thing. But
Right.
that was James Bond back then, and I
feel
think
pretty safe that's probably not going to be an IO's game. Or at least to that magnitude, in that where it's like, oh no, you're just a piece of shit. Like, I'm sure there will be a love interest, but like, come on, like he definitely won't be over there just like, I am man, you have sex with me.
Literally. And I am really excited for the game, because I think that when we talk about what went, maybe not necessarily what went wrong per se, but as far as what could have been done a little differently with this game in general, as far as previous IPs, things of that nature, or previous iterations of this IP. The biggest thing to me is just the opportunity there is for the true espionage part of the game. I think that you're going to see IDO make a conscious effort to try to further that, rather than just the run and gun shooting that GoldenEye kind of offered. And I realize that GoldenEye, especially compared to the newer versions of this game, it wasn't so much about the sex appeal and things of that nature like the older movies were.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel like even with GoldenEye, they kind of missed an opportunity to be able to really play up some of the espionage parts of that movie in general also, where it was more of a I guess you could call it it is a great game, and it paid homage to the movies, and I realized that the movies are a little bit less about spying, and they've always been a little bit more about the sex and this and that. And I just feel like if you disconnect this game, this IP from the movies, I feel like you have a really strong opportunity to really showcase what an espionage game for James Bond could actually look like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm looking forward to, is actually getting to experience the spy side of James Bond instead of just like the run and gun portion of it. Because even though that run and gun portion of it is, very fun, I do feel like there's a lot that this game can offer outside of that.
You saying that actually is a really, really good point, and something I really, I guess I don't want to say didn't think of contextualizing in that fashion, where you look at, and while obviously, as we were saying, we've had our qualms with how, the older Bond films translate, from some aspects of James Bond's character, but like,
or just blatantly don't translate. But
right,
yes.
Right. And I say that in a sarcastical fashion, but you get what I mean, where it's, you look at a James Bond movie from, 50 years ago, whatever, at this point, you look at films, with Sean Connery, and, as they've kind of evolved into now where we are with Daniel Craig, those movies are vastly different, and those Bonds are vastly different, where you see a Bond that literally was more, focused on getting information, focusing on trying to be more of a spy, where now a Daniel Craig Bond is much more of an action hero. It's not necessarily like, and granted, even then with Sean Connery, you did have the like those action
Those parts,
moments.
yeah.
Yeah. Like, and that is, quintessential Bond to a degree. But what I love most about this idea of having this is having, like you're saying, a true espionage experience where you look at Hitman, and specifically the newer trilogy of Hitman games that IO has put out and IO has been at the heart of, and you see how those games are played, how they're approached, how they approach stealth combat and things like that. And obviously, a Bond film doesn't, or it can't completely be all stealth or anything like that, but the idea of taking so many aspects of Hitman's gameplay and infusing them into the Bond license is just so refreshing and energizing to think of. Having that experience where, and I think almost Bond to a degree could have that breath of almost like we've talked about before with like a Resident Evil, where Resident Evil, a franchise we love a lot, one of the great things about it is it has so much bandwidth to it where it can have different styles of games within it. You could have now the mainline games have a first person, perspective where it's more of a actual horror emphasis on it, where you look at a Resident Evil 4, which aligns more with it's more campy in parts of it, but in a good way. It's a great third person zombie style game, over the shoulder. When you also look at the original Resident Evil and it's isometric and it's much more claustrophobic and, things like that, where it has this bandwidth where it could be different style games. And hell, Resident Evil 5, not a great survival horror game, but a hell of a co-op game to play, and it's much more of a third person shooter. So like, they're all good in their own right to a degree. I'm not talking about Resident Evil 6 or anything like that, or some of the like Operation Raccoon City or some of the dog shit titles like that. But, and I think a lot of people are safe saying that, like, but the fact of the matter is it has bandwidth. And I think that could be applicable with the Bond franchise, where you could have experiences like a GoldenEye, like something like that. And hell, even the person who did GoldenEye Source, like you could have experiences like that, a first person shooter as experience, but you could also have these kind of, mission focused experiences like a Hitman, that you could fit a Bond into that template so easily and that it's so transferable. Like it's one of those like, this just makes too much sense not to do. And I'm just so happy we're getting to see that. And it was one of those, like, I remember being at, I think that was a day I actually had to go into the office and not work from home. Like being in there, seeing that pop up on Twitter and being like almost the Indiana Jones and Machine Games, kind of reaction where I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, that is, yes, that makes so much sense. Like more so than, Machine Games and Indiana Jones. But point being, taking an IP like that has so much bandwidth to it that you could see doing so much with, and being like, yes, give it to a really talented studio and just let them go fucking buck wild and see what they do. So I'm all for this. I am so excited for this game. That is like one of my like already most anticipated games of whenever the next 3 years. It'll be a day one purchase for me easily. Because I definitely want to cover that game. But anyways, Mike, let's move into our last news article for this week, and kind of a quick one to wrap it up. Like I said, I want to wrap on a good note because this is something we've been asking for a long time, I think, and asking for from our favorite studio out there, 343 Industries, right? So 343 Industries promises monthly Halo Infinite updates for fans. This comes from Alex Calvin over on VG247. As always, link in the description. The studio wants to take its audience behind the scenes more often. Microsoft's 343 Industries studio has said that it will be giving updates about Halo Infinite every month. In a post on Reddit, Brian Sketch Gerard said that the developer would be providing more regular information about the upcoming sci-fi shooter, with the first of these updates coming in just a few days. So hopefully we'll have more to report on that starting next week. Quote, we're committed to at least a monthly high-level updates for the next Inside Infinite, which is coming out later this week, Gerard wrote. Quote, this month, we're talking with members of the Sandbox team to share more insight into their vision for Halo Infinite and the work they're doing. To manage expectations, we won't have world premiere big screenshots or huge things like a date to announce, but our goal is to offer our community more context and insight into our team and the game we're making, while we're also awaiting the larger beats and full marketing machine later this year. This comes in the wake of Microsoft showing off the new Halo game last year, but fans were left disappointed by the state of the project. Halo Infinite was initially set to be an Xbox Series X and S launch title, but was delayed until 2021. The studio has promised that the final release will boast improved graphics and more. So, like I said, I think it's safe to say that communication was always our biggest issue with the development of Infinite up until its gameplay reveal in August of last year. And really, a commitment to straightforward communication in a post-delay world is just literally so welcomed. That is the easiest way to just, avert bad press and different things like that. It's just to be, I think more people will be okay with bad news if you're just upfront with them and realistic with them. And something like this is very much in that vein. So, Mike, what are some of the biggest sticking points of this game that you're hoping to learn each month as we kind of lead into Infinite's launch later this year? Like Sketch said, we're not going to be getting, every month this big, massive screenshot dump or gameplay reveals or, a release date every single month or something like that of that level. But we're going to get a lot of information, a lot of deep dive things, I think, a lot of more nuanced things that, fans have been asking for with this game leading up to it, hell, even last year. Now, almost a year later at this point, what are some of these things you're hoping to learn each month as we kind of get closer to that fall date now?
I am genuinely hoping to see what they changed, because if their big thing was to completely kind of overhaul the game because of a lot of different things, really, that could have, necessarily been determined. People could say that it was bad or this or that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear exactly what they're doing to remedy the bad game, if you will, if that's why they did what they did.
Mm-hmm.
They truthfully thought that the game was bad, then I want to hear what they're doing to fix it. And that entails a lot. That entails some soul searching. That entails, honesty. What was wrong in the first, or what went wrong in the first place, what they're doing to make it right. All of those things have to be talked about when you're discussing, why a game is why a game's completely being redone the way that this game basically is.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, as long as we hear these things, I will be, relatively happy, because, that's something that it does honestly take a lot of. It's admirable that 343 as a company is willing to kind of bite the bullet and say, our bad, let's make this right. And they're doing that. And that's really cool to me, because it's not easy. We see a lot of developers and a lot of studios, they are either stubborn and won't admit when they're wrong, or they just refuse to believe that they're wrong. I don't know what is driving some of these decisions that they make, or why they can sometimes almost seemingly be too proud to admit when they're wrong. But I'm excited, because that's the one thing that I think us as Halo fans, you and me included, have been clamoring for, is like, what are you going to do about it now type thing? We know that you guys goofed, but what can you do about it now to fix it? And they're going to tell you what they're going to do about it. And I think that's what, from everything I've seen, that's what everyone that, I talk to that still plays Halo, that's what everyone's kind of clamoring for. They just want transparency. They just want honesty. And that's what they're going to get, from 343, hopefully going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It all just comes down to honesty and transparency. Like, we preach so much on the show that it's like, I think that's why, I think so many people, or once they announced this delay, so many people were just like, yes, that's okay. That's good. We could tell that this game is not ready. My dad always used to, anytime I was in trouble, and I try to weasel my way out of it as a kid or whatever, he'd always say, and this is more so a saying when I got to be a teenager, he's like, listen, you can't bullshit a bullshitter. You can't pull the wool over someone's eyes like that when it's clear as day something isn't right. And
mm-hmm.
if the biggest thing that, especially you, and I give you all the credit for literally every week on the show, anytime we bring up Halo Infinite, leading up to that gameplay reveal, you're like, this game is not coming out. This game is not coming out for fall 2020 or the release, or launching with the Xbox Series X. Like, it is going to get delayed, and me being like, well, which is usually the case, but clearly anything can happen. Traditionally, launch games don't get delayed. Like, that just doesn't happen. But you were right, and you were like, no, this game is not ready. And what do you know, it wasn't. And the amount of time that we were going into that, and it's like, man, certain games, okay, cool. Bethesda usually likes to play it close to the belt. Bethesda properly, Bethesda Game Studios, when they reveal their games, like, they like to do it at most 6 months out or something like that, where they like to reveal gameplay and everything at once so they can start rolling out marketing and yada yada. I get that, but for a game like Halo that was announced 2 years before that, where you're shown nothing, 2 trailers, that's it. No screenshots, no anything, just 2 cinematic trailers, that it's like, okay, if we're supposed to be, if we're a fan base that's supposed to be investing in this game day one, and you're wanting to make sales day one, and specifically if this is going to be a free-to-play game in terms of its multiplayer and things like that, where you're relying on people for this to be their number one game, like, you're talking to the people who buy 3 games a year or whatever, 1 to 3 games a year. You're talking to them to get you to buy this game, like, and this be that ecosystem they sink their time into. You got to give them something. And knowing that we didn't get anything, that clearly just says already, like, okay, something is wrong. Like, something is just wrong with this game. And all you have to do is just be upfront and honest. And granted, that falls on Microsoft too, not just 343, because I'm sure Microsoft is also saying, like, no, this game is supposed to be selling our console. Like, we're not, until the sync ships, we're not going down. Like, I get it, but just on this stuff alone, like, it just seems so refreshing already. And I think it seems like a lot of things with 343 have come to a head leading up to that gameplay reveal and after. And I don't want to say some of the fat has been trimmed, and some of the things that needed to happen a while ago probably happened, and we're probably seeing that now. That I think the view of this game seems so much in a much brighter light than before now. That after that delay, after some of the internal movements, whether that's coming in, leaving, whatever, it just seems like before, this game was a game, like, and I still think it is to a degree, but this is a game that just flat out needs to succeed, because this is probably 343's last chance at taking Halo. And I would have never thought that even after Halo 5, I was like, you know what? No, like, this may be Halo's last chance at Halo becoming a game, but no, this is a 2-pronged thing now, that this may be 343's last chance at really making Halo games in a proper fashion. That I think Microsoft sees that writing more so than ever, that they made these moves to make this happen. And transparency goes along with that. Having Joseph Staten come out and do a whole blog post of saying, no, this is how we're going moving forward, in December, saying this, like, this is how to expect information about this game. I'm being straight up with you. It didn't fucking work before for what we were trying to present. We heard you. We're tackling it. This is what we're doing. Here's new screenshots. Here's how we're handling this. Here's how we're handling that. Expect this type of information every month moving forward, type of thing. So to me, that solves so much, because then not only are you getting, now granted, release dates have to happen, and artistic vision, committing to that on a developer end, I will always support, whether it be something maybe I don't like or whatever, but it is what it is. But at the end of the day, if it's things that come out, whether it involves gameplay and gameplay aspect that's for competitive or anything along those lines, that, you want that fan information, you want your community to give you that, like, feedback on, it's just so easy. Just ask them. Like, bring that up. And that's, for the longest time, Mike, I really do applaud you for saying, like, no, this needs to happen. This needs to happen. Like, you need to be upfront with us. You need to tell us stuff. You need to let us know, so then we could tell you, like, okay, I get what you're trying to do. That's totally fine, but doing that causes this. Why don't we address this? And so the game, there isn't this big of a drastic thing from X, Y, and Z. Like, that's the communication that's to be open on it. And I'm glad that it seems like it's moving that way, because I think more and more open communication within games, especially in games that are eventually going to be live service based, like Halo Infinite, is only going to be better. It only makes the communities grow longer and the games become better versions of themselves. So I applaud it. I'm ready to see more of what comes out. I'm still excited for this game. But anywho, Mike, it's going to do it for our articles this week. But before we wrap up, let's head into Party Chat. This is where we propose one question at the end of each week, at the end of the show, where we want to just discuss. Could be as simple as, what's your favorite story beat in the game? Or what have you been playing during the pandemic and quarantine and all that horrible shit? Or it could be a little more in depth as to why the negative stigma around gaming exists or something like that. And after answering the question ourselves, we'll kick it over to you to tweet your responses to the question over on our Twitter at GPGC Podcast, or email us at bonusaccessory@gmail.com, and we'll read some of the responses the following week. Last week's question: what is one, well, I didn't have that on my bingo card of X year prediction for 2021 that we want to make? And Ethan W. wrote in our email saying Elden Ring will provide actual tie-ins to all of From Software's Soulsborne games, cementing a shared universe between them. I like that one. That's pretty good. I've always thought there would be, but they haven't really, I think, said something one way or another. Ethan, you probably know more than me, but I'm not a big Souls guy. I digress, though. Mike, this week's question: at the end of 2021, what percentage of Xbox Game Pass users will be mobile-only users? That means they don't play on Xbox One, Xbox Series X, S, whatever. They don't play on PC. They buy Xbox Game Pass and use it to play like Xbox games via Game Pass on mobile only. That's all they do. What percentage of subscribers do you think will fall into that account?
Wow.
That's a tough one, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been speechless twice this show, and I think listeners of the show, if you guys have been here for a while, you would know that that's not often the case. I usually always have something to say, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing. Sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's good. I would say, personally, holy shit. So are we talking like Stadia on the on the TV mobile, or are we talking genuinely just on
on mobile, iPad, whatever? Like, because I know Game Pass, I know Xbox did say that they found a way to make it work with iOS in terms of, going via web browser, I think is what they're going to focus on. But yes, we're talking Android devices, iOS devices, the works like that, and a mobile phone, iPad, etc. A mobile device compared to a PC or a console.
All right, I'm gonna keep it a buck with you.
Okay, all right.
I have a little bit of insider knowledge on this, not like 100% insider trading or anything crazy,
Right?
But I have a little bit of knowledge on this, and simply like this comes purely 100% off the fact that my employer. I don't want to give very much. I won't say much more about it, but I will say that the increase in 5G capabilities and the increase in 5G just being a bit more widely accessible, if you will, it's 100% going to cause an uptick in the fact that mobile gaming and streaming is going to be a lot more possible, just simply because internet speeds are going to get much better, or internet speeds are already much better. But because of basically the increased bandwidth speeds, the increased ping, the increased download upload speed, 5G, being able to be on 5G out and about, especially if you're in inner city, you'll actually be able to play games online on mobile. So I think it's going to be higher than most people would think. I'm only willing to go up to 30%.
See,
I think it's actually going to probably be less. I would say probably 20% and below, but it's going to be, mobile only. Oh, shit. I'm going to go, I guess 10%, I would say.
That's what I was going to go. I was going to go 8, like 8%. And I think for 2021, after that, when 5G becomes like an actual, like you're saying, a staple and really becomes like a viable, it's easily accessible for everyone who, who really wants it, I guess, or, has a mobile device, they can get 5G access in terms of having a smartphone or whatever, which literally everyone does now. But, having access to that at a very like viable level within the next couple years, yeah, it's going to go up much more than that. I'm going to say for 2021 though, I'm going 8%. So we're in the same boat for the most part. Like I think it is 10% or below. I think more than that for 2021, maybe stretching it, but because I still think it's still viewed as a, hey, yeah, this is just a nice throw in terms of the mobile access that most people are playing console or PC, but still, it's still nonetheless like, there's still people out there who do that, I'm sure, working professionals who have kids or whatever, and hey, I ride the bus to work, whenever obviously it's going to be safe to do that again in a very normal manner, but like I ride the bus to work, I got a half hour each day that I can play games, or an hour, there and back or whatever. So I agree, it's going to be low, but Mike, I think that's going to do it for our episode this week. Why don't you tell people where they can find you on the interwebs to talk about all things gaming, including whether we're talking about the Vicarious Visions Blizzard stuff, whether we're talking about IO Interactive and the Bond title coming up, or Halo Infinite. Where can people find you on the interwebs to talk about all the nerdy stuff we love to talk about?
You can find me on Twitter at TOYSXLDIER, or you can find me on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier.
Nice. And as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travis on most internet platforms, including at Travels_ on Twitter. That's TRAVLESS_ on Twitter. And you can also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Travels_, same as Twitter. And if you want to play some video games with me over on Xbox Live, you could do so at just regular Travels. That's TRAVLESS. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has been your newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay updated with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. With that, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for our episode this week. Mike, it's going to wrap it up for this week. Thank you everyone so much for listening, sharing, and being a part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to the doctors. Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.